The smell of the place hit me first, even through the cracked window of my rusting Toyota. It wasn't a bad smell, just particular. A century of lemon-scented disinfectant over old wood, industrial floor wax, and the faint, cold odor of stone. It was the smell of money, or at least the spent husk of it. The prep school sprawled across the manicured New England hillside like a sleeping beast of brick and ivy. Crane's Hollow Academy, a name that suggested legacy, tradition, a smooth path to an Ivy League future. My path here had been less smooth. A stack of medical bills from my mother's final months, a default on a loan I'd co-signed for a brother who'd since vanished, a bankruptcy that left me with a pickup truck and a duffel bag of regrets. The job posting had been stark: night custodial supervisor, isolated campus, hazard pay included, references not required. I met the day supervisor, a man named Gerard, at the service entrance at 4 in the afternoon. He was maybe 60, with the thick forearms of a man who'd spent his life moving heavy things. He shook my hand once, his grip dry and firm, and his eyes didn't linger on my face. "You'll do the East Academic buildings, the library ground floor, and the gym annex," he said, his voice a low rasp. "Maps in the binder. Keys are tagged. Radio is on channel 4. You do not, under any circumstances, use any other channel. Your shift is 10 at night to 6 in the morning. You clock in at 9:55, not a minute earlier, not a minute later. You clock out at 6:05. The pay is direct deposit every 2 weeks. Questions?" I had 100, about the work, the supplies, the bizarrely precise timing. "Hazard pay for a school?" I asked. Gerard's gaze drifted over my shoulder to the dense line of maples and pines that bordered the campus. "It's an old building," he said, which wasn't an answer. "You'll be alone. We take safety seriously. Come on." The tour was brisk. He showed me the custodial closet on the main floor of Thatcher Hall, my home base. It was stocked with an almost military precision. Bottles of cleaner lined up by volume. Rolls of paper towels stacked to a painted line on the shelf. A locked cabinet for the floor buffer. He showed me the light panels, the breaker box, which I was not to touch, and the 2 fire extinguishers, their inspection tags current. "Patrol routes are in the binder," he continued, leading me down a back staircase. The air grew cooler, damper. "You follow them in the order listed. You complete each building's tasks before moving to the next. No deviations. If you see something out of place, you note it in the log. You do not attempt to fix it yourself unless the procedures specify. Understood?" "Understood," I echoed, feeling like a new recruit. We stopped at a heavy windowless steel door at the end of a short, cinder block corridor. It was painted a dull gray, and it had a newer, more substantial lock than any of the classroom doors. A sign read, "Boiler Room, authorized personnel only." "This is the only basement access you are authorized to use," Gerard said. He didn't reach for his keys. "You will need to check the boiler pressure gauges and the sump pump indicator light once per shift. The procedure is on page 12 of the binder. You will perform this check between 1:20 and 1:40 in the morning. Not before, not after. The door is to remain locked at all other times. You do not enter the basement for any reason other than this check. Is that clear?" "It's just a boiler room," I said. Gerard finally looked at me directly. His eyes were a pale, watery blue. "It's the basement. The rules are for the basement. You read the binder, all of it, before your shift starts tonight." He pressed the master key into my palm. It was cold. "Welcome to Crane's Hollow." He left me there, standing before the gray door. I climbed back to the main floor, the silence of the empty school pressing in. In the closet, I found the binder. It was a thick, 3-ring notebook with laminated pages. The first 20 pages were standard stuff: emergency contacts, MSDS sheets for the cleaning chemicals, floor plans. Then, on page 21, a new header: night shift protocols, Thatcher Hall, basement access. The text was concise, numbered. 1. Basement access is permitted only between the hours of 1:20 and 1:40 in the morning. 2. Prior to unlocking the basement door at 1:20, verify the corridor is empty. If you observe any person, animal, or unidentified object within 50 feet of the door, do not proceed. Wait until the next patrol cycle, approximately 2 hours, and reassess. 3. Unlock the door. Before descending, turn on the basement overhead lights via the switch on the wall immediately inside the door. The lights must remain on for the duration of your time in the basement. 4. Descend the stairs. There are 14 steps, count them. If you count more or fewer than 14, do not proceed. Ascend immediately, turn off the lights, lock the door, and report the discrepancy on Channel 4. 5. Upon reaching the basement floor, proceed directly to the boiler. The pressure gauge should read between 40 and 60 psi. Note the reading in the logbook hanging on the pipe next to the gauge. 6. Visually inspect the sump pump in the southwest corner. The green indicator light on its control box must be illuminated. If it is not, do not touch it. Note the outage in the logbook and report it on Channel 4 at 2:15, not before. 7. Do not speak, hum, or whistle while in the basement. 8. Do not look into the shadows at the far northern end of the basement, past the old furnace units. Your work area is the illuminated central zone containing the boiler and sump pump. 9. If you hear a voice calling your name from the northern shadows, do not acknowledge it. Do not turn. Complete your work tasks and depart. 10. When leaving, ascend the 14 steps. At the top, turn off the lights from the inside switch. Exit, close the door, and engage the lock. Verify the lock has caught by pulling firmly on the handle 3 times. 11. You must be fully clear of the basement corridor by 1:40. The door must be locked by 1:39 at the latest. 12. If at any point during the procedure, the overhead lights flicker or shut off, freeze in place. Close your eyes. Count to 30 in your head. If the lights restore, proceed with your tasks. If they do not, ascend the stairs in darkness, counting each step. Do not turn on your flashlight unless you have reached the top and confirmed the door is closed. Then use your flashlight to unlock the door, exit, and lock it. Report the event at 2:15. I read the list twice. My first thought was a hazing ritual, an elaborate, stupid joke for the new night guy. But Gerard hadn't seemed like the joking type. The rules were too specific, too procedural. They read like the safety instructions for handling radioactive material. I shook my head, a faint smile on my lips. Whatever. I needed the paycheck. If they wanted me to count stairs and not whistle, I could do that. My first shift began at 10. The school was a different creature at night. The echoing halls, lit by sporadic emergency lights, felt cavernous. The soft hum of the buffer as I polished the long main corridor floor was the only sound. I followed the patrol route, empty trash in the history wing, wiped down the science lab counters, cleaned the mirrors and sinks in the second floor bathrooms. The work was mindless, physical. It left room for my thoughts to wander back to my debts, my empty apartment, the silence of my own life. By 1:15, I was ahead of schedule. I stood in the custodial closet, looking at the gray door at the end of the short corridor. At 1:19, I walked to the door. The corridor was empty. At 1:20 on the dot, I inserted the key. The lock turned with a heavy clunk. I pushed the door open, found the light switch, a large industrial toggle, and flipped it up. Yellowish light flooded a concrete stairwell. I counted as I went down. 1, 2, 3, 12, 13, 14. 14 exactly. The basement was larger than I'd expected, a low-ceiling space supported by thick brick pillars. The active boiler was a hulking modern unit in the center, surrounded by a moat of clean concrete. Beyond it, in the pool of light, sat the sump pump. Further out, the light failed, swallowed by deep shadow. I could just make out the bulky shapes of decommissioned furnaces and piles of old furniture draped in dusty tarps. The air was cold and still, smelling of damp concrete and oil. I went to the boiler. The gauge read 55 psi. I noted it in the small logbook on a nail. I walked the 20 feet to the sump pump. The green light glowed steadily. I turned to leave. From the far north end of the basement, deep in the shadows past the old furnaces, I heard a scrape, like a heavy chair being dragged slowly across concrete. I froze. The sound stopped. Rule 8. Do not look into the shadows at the far northern end. My heart, which had been calm, began a slow, hard thump against my ribs. It was probably a rat, a big one, or pipes settling. I forced myself to walk, not run, back to the stairs. I counted them again on the way up. 14. I flipped the light switch, stepped out, closed the door, and locked it. I pulled the handle 3 times. It held firm. The quarter clock read 1:38. I was clear by 1:40. Back in the custodial closet, I wrote in the main log, 1:20 a.m., basement check completed. All readings normal. I did not mention the sound. I poured a cup of coffee from my thermos and waited for my pulse to settle. Hazing. It had to be. The next few nights established a rhythm. I mastered the patrol routes. I learned which floorboards creaked in the library, which sink in the gym locker room dripped if you didn't jiggle the handle. The night world of Crane's Hollow became my own. The silence was no longer oppressive, but a medium I moved through. I followed the basement rules to the letter, a silent game I played with myself. Count the steps, check the gauge, ignore the shadows. Every time, without fail, I heard something. A soft, rhythmic tapping one night, a low, sighing breath another. Once, I heard what sounded like pages of a book being turned, slowly. I kept my eyes on my tasks, my back to the dark. One Thursday, just after 2 a.m, my radio crackled to life on Channel 4. It was the dispatcher, a woman named Lynn with a perpetually tired voice. Thatcher 1, status check. Thatcher 1, Patrol 3, complete. All secure. Copy. Be advised, Weather Service predicts fog rolling in from the valley after 3. Visibility may be reduced on perimeter checks. Copy. Any update on the order for sealant tape? Negative. Next supply truck is Monday. Conserve your current roll. You have 20 yards remaining. Confirm. I checked the shelf. The roll of heavy cloth-backed tape we used for temporary window seals was indeed low. Confirmed, approximately 20 yards. Acknowledged, Lynn out. The exchange was normal, but it highlighted the odd preparedness of the place. The tape, the precise inventories, the weather alerts for a man cleaning floors indoors. I finished my coffee and began the next patrol. That night, during the basement check, the lights flickered. It was a quick, violent dip in brightness that made the shadows leap. My body went rigid. Rule 12. I closed my eyes. In the darkness behind my eyelids, the afterimage of the boiler swam. I began to count. 1, 2, 3. The silence was total. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. 10, 11, 12. A new sound reached me, not from the north shadows, but from the stairs behind me. A soft, shuffling footstep on the concrete, then another. Something was coming down. 21, 22. The footsteps stopped. I felt a cold draft on the back of my neck. A smell reached me, not damp or oily, but dry and sweet, like old paper and forgotten sachets. 28, 29, 30. I opened my eyes. The lights were steady. The basement was empty. The stairs behind me were clear. The smell was gone. My hand trembled slightly as I finished noting the sump pump light. I ascended, counted the steps, 14, killed the lights, locked the door. It was 1:39. I stood in the corridor, breathing hard. For the first time, I considered that the rules weren't a joke. A week later, the new amendment sheet appeared. It was slipped into the binder, a single laminated page without comment. Amendment to night shift protocols, effective immediately. 1. The basement door must now be visually inspected every hour, on the hour, from outside the corridor. Do not enter the corridor unless it is for the 1:20 check. Simply verify from the main hall that the door is closed and the corridor is empty. 2. Radio check-ins with dispatch are now required at 2:15, 3:45, and 5:15. Use the exact phrase, Thatcher 1, secure. The dispatcher will respond, acknowledged, maintain. Any deviation in phrasing should be noted, and you will repeat your call sign and status until the correct response is given. 3. If you encounter any individual on the grounds after 1 a.m., claiming to be a member of the maintenance crew, do not engage. They will be wearing a navy jacket. The authorized night maintenance jacket is brown. Report the sighting immediately. 4. The inventory of sealant tape, bottled water, and battery stocks in your closet is to be logged at the beginning and end of each shift. Discrepancies of more than 10% are to be reported. 5. If, during a patrol, you find a window or door already locked that should be unlocked according to the route schedule, do not unlock it. Mark it on your log and proceed. Do not investigate. 6. The 1:20 basement check window is now 1:20 to 1:35. You must be clear of the corridor by 1:35. The amendments tightened the world around me. The hourly glance at the basement corridor became a new punctuation in my night. I never saw anything amiss, but the act itself heightened my awareness. The radio checks were robotic, but I obeyed. Thatcher 1, secure. Acknowledged, maintain. Then, on a cold, clear night with a gibbous moon casting sharp shadows through the tall windows, I met the rookie. Gerard brought him by at 9:45. His name was Leo, a young guy, maybe 22, trying to grow a patchy beard. He was being trained for the West Campus buildings. Gerard left him with me for an hour for procedural orientation. Leo was nervous, chatty. "Weird gig, huh?" he said, sipping the coffee I offered. "All these rules. My binder's got like a whole page about not using the third floor bathroom in the art center after midnight. Says the mirrors steam up from the inside. Creepy. Just follow the book. I said, my voice sounding more like Gerard's than my own. Yeah, but why, you know? What's in the basement? Old chemical drums or something? Boiler and a sump pump. Right. He didn't believe me. I didn't blame him. When Gerard returned to collect him, Leo gave me a half wave. See you in the funny papers, man. I didn't see him again for 2 nights. Then, at 2:15 during my radio check, Lynn's voice was tense. Thatcher 1, secure. Thatcher 1, secure, I responded. Acknowledged, maintain. Be advised, West Campus is off channel for a procedural review. Do not attempt contact. That was unusual. Copy. Any ETA for resumption? Negative. Maintain your schedule. Lynn out. The night felt heavier after that. At 3:45, when I called in, Lynn's acknowledged maintain was clipped, hurried. I completed my patrols, the silence feeling watchful. Just before 5, as I was mopping the main foyer, I saw a figure outside, moving across the quad. It was Leo. He was wearing a navy blue jacket. He was walking not towards the West Campus dorms, but towards the tree line at the edge of the sports fields. His gait was odd, shuffling, and he kept his head down. Rule 3 of the amendments flashed in my mind. Navy jacket. Do not engage. I moved to the window. He was about 100 yards away. I should radio it in, but he was just a kid. Maybe disoriented. Maybe in trouble. I keyed the radio. Dispatch, Thatcher 1. Visual on a person, West Quad, near the tree line. Wearing a navy jacket. Appears to be the new West Campus hire. The radio hissed. Lynn's voice came back, sharp. Thatcher 1, do not engage. Repeat, do not approach or acknowledge. Return to your scheduled tasks. Copy, but he's... Return to your tasks now. The channel went dead. I watched. Leo reached the tree line. He didn't enter the woods. He stopped and his head tilted back, as if looking at the stars. He stood like that for a full minute. Then, in a movement that was utterly fluid and entirely wrong, he turned his head a full 180 degrees to look directly back at the school, at my window. The distance was too great to see his face, but I knew he was looking. I stepped back from the glass, my skin crawling. When I looked again, he was gone. The next morning, as I was clocking out at 6:05, Gerard was waiting by the time clock. His face was grim. The rookie, he said without preamble. He's gone, quit, left his stuff in his locker. I saw him last night, I said, my voice low. Near the trees. He wasn't right. Gerard's eyes narrowed. You followed procedure. I radioed it in. Lynn told me to stand down. He nodded once, a sharp dip of his chin. Good. The rules are there for a reason. His binder was found open to the West Campus basement protocols. Page was torn. He looked at me. You keep your head down. You follow the book. That's how you last here. He walked away, leaving me with the image of Leo's impossibly rotated head. The baton had been passed, not to me, but to the silence. Leo had broken a rule, maybe several, and the silence had taken him. It wasn't a monster in the dark. It was a consequence, precise and mechanistic. The following week, a storm rolled in. Not just fog, but a proper nor'easter. The wind howled around the old buildings, rattling windows. The power flickered twice before 10 p.m. Lynn came on the radio, her voice all business. All stations enact Emergency Protocol Sierra. Confirm acknowledgement. I pulled the binder. The emergency protocols were on a red-bordered page at the very back. Emergency Protocol Sierra. Severe weather. Extended power instability. 1. All perimeter patrols are suspended. Secure yourself in your designated primary closet. 2. Using the provided sealant tape, seal the gap beneath the closet door. Use no less than 3 continuous layers. 3. Inventory your provisions. Water, 2 gallons. Batteries, 12, size D. Flashlight, radio, first aid kit. Log the inventory. 4. Maintain radio silence unless directly contacted. If contact is initiated, you will be asked for a code word. The code word is harbor. If you're not given this code word, do not respond. If you're asked for a code word, respond with steadfast. 5. Do not open the door for any reason until you receive the all clear signal. 3 consecutive radio calls, on the minute, for 3 minutes, from dispatch using your correct call sign and the code word dawn. 6. If the door handle rattles or turns, shine your flashlight directly at the door and turn on all available light sources in the closet. Do not speak. 7. If you hear knocking, ignore it unless it is a sequence of 3 knocks, a pause, then 2 knocks. This is the distress pattern of a verified staff member. If you hear this sequence, you may respond by knocking back twice. Do not open the door unless they verbally provide the current day's code word. See Subrule 4. 8. The protocol remains in effect until 6 in the morning, regardless of weather abatement. The storm gave the rules a new, urgent logic. This was no longer about eerie sounds in a basement. This was the siege manual. I quickly taped the door, the ripping sound of the tape loud in the small room. I inventoried my supplies. I had exactly what was listed. I turned off the main lights, leaving only my small desk lamp on, and sat on my stool, the radio on the shelf beside me. The wind screamed. The building groaned. At 11:17, the power failed completely. The desk lamp died. I was plunged into a blackness so complete it felt solid. I fumbled for my flashlight, clicked it on. The beam was a welcome lance of reality. I trained it on the door. Minutes stretched. An hour passed. The radio remained silent. Then, at 12:43, I heard footsteps in the hall outside. Heavy, slow, deliberate. They stopped outside my door. The handle rattled once, gently. I shone the flashlight beam at the center of the door, my heart hammering. I clicked on the battery-powered lantern from the shelf, flooding the closet with cold white light. The rattling stopped. The footsteps moved away. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. At 1:09, a voice came from the other side of the door. It was Lynn's voice, but thick with static, as if coming from very far away. Thatcher 1, report status. Are you secure? My hand moved toward the radio, but Protocol Sierra was clear. Maintain radio silence unless directly contacted. If contact is initiated, you will be asked for a code word. She hadn't given a code word. I held my breath. Thatcher 1, please respond. We have a situation in the West Wing. The voice was pleading now. It sounded exactly like her. I didn't move. I didn't speak. The voice sighed, a sound of static and disappointment. Then it began to whisper. It was my mother's voice, frail from her illness. Sweetheart, it's so dark out here. Can you let me in? I'm cold. A fist of ice closed around my chest. I knew it wasn't her. I knew it. But the sound of her voice, after 2 years of silence, was a physical ache. Tears welled in my eyes. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. The pain anchored me. I focused on the beam of my flashlight on the door. The whispering continued for a few minutes, weaving fragments of memory. A birthday, a song she used to hum. Then it stopped. The only sound was the raging storm. At 2:15, the radio on the shelf crackled. A different voice, male and calm, came through. Thatcher 1, this is dispatch. Code word, harbor. Request status. I keyed the mic, my voice hoarse. Steadfast. Thatcher 1 secure. Provisions intact. Acknowledged, Thatcher 1. Maintain protocol. Next check at 4:15. The storm began to subside around 5. The power did not return. At 5:58, the radio came to life. Thatcher 1, this is dispatch. Code word, dawn. A minute of silence. Thatcher 1, this is dispatch. Code word, dawn. Another minute. Thatcher 1, this is dispatch. Code word, dawn. The all clear. My body felt like it was made of lead. I peeled the tape from the door, a slow, laborious process. When I opened it, the hallway was dark, lit only by emergency exit signs. The air was cold and smelled of rain and wet plaster. I walked my patrol routes. The school was a mess. Leaves and rain had blown in under a compromised window seal in the library. A large ceiling tile had collapsed in the gym. But the basement corridor was quiet. The gray door was locked. I performed my check at the regular time in the beam of my flashlight. 14 steps. Boiler pressure stable. Sump pump light glowing in the dark. I heard nothing from the north. Shadows. They seemed deeper, more absolute in the flashlight's beam. At shift change, Gerard was there again. He looked exhausted. He saw the tape residue on my doorframe and gave a curt nod. West Campus lost a man last night, he said flatly. Tried to run for his car when the lights went out. Didn't follow Sierra. They found his jacket, turned inside out, near the service road. Nothing else. I didn't ask what that meant. I just nodded. The cost of a breach was no longer an abstract concept. It was a missing person report and an inside-out jacket. The next amendment appeared a few days later, shorter, more severe. Further amendments. 1. The 120 basement check is now a 2-person task. Until a new West Campus hire is vetted and trained, you will be accompanied by the day supervisor, Gerard, who will arrive at 1:15 and depart at 1:40. You are not to speak to him during this procedure beyond what is necessary for the tasks. 2. The sealant tape inventory is now to be checked every 2 hours. A new roll has 40 yards. Report when your roll drops below 15. 3. If you see your reflection in any window between the hours of 3 and 4 in the morning, and your reflection is not mimicking your movements exactly, break the line of sight immediately. Do not investigate the discrepancy. 4. The radio code words are now rotated daily. The new list is sealed in the envelope marked discreet in the lockbox. You will memorize the day's codes at the start of each shift and destroy the previous day's slip. Gerard's presence during the basement check changed the dynamic. He was a silent, solid shadow beside me. He counted the stairs under his breath. He watched the shadows with a professional detachment I was beginning to cultivate. One night, as we stood by the boiler, the sound of a child crying echoed softly from the north end. It was a hopeless, desolate sound. Gerard's jaw tightened, but he didn't turn. He pointed at the sump pump light, reminding me to log it. We left. Upstairs, as he prepared to leave, he finally spoke. It gets easier, he said, not unkindly. The not looking. You just have to decide that what's over there is not your business. Your business is the gauge, the light, the lock. He was right. I was learning to compartmentalize. The school was a machine with faulty, dangerous components. My job was to follow the maintenance manual to keep the machine running, not to understand why certain gears bit. My debt numbers were slowly going down. That was my reality. The crying child in the dark was a recorded message on a broken intercom. nothing more. Then came the long night. It wasn't a storm. There was no weather event. It was a Tuesday. Everything was normal until 11:47, when all the exterior security lights went out simultaneously. Not a flicker. A total, silent extinction. My radio buzzed. It was Lynn, but her voice was tight, hurried. Thatcher, 1, enact Protocol Midnight. Confirm. Protocol Midnight wasn't in my binder. I keyed the mic. Dispatch, I do not have that protocol. A burst of static, then Gerard's voice, strained. Listen carefully. This is a live update. Protocol Midnight. 1. Secure the basement door from the outside with the crossbar. It's in the storage niche to the left. Do it now. I ran to the corridor. In a shallow alcove I'd never noticed, a heavy steel crossbar leaned. I fitted it into brackets on the doorframe, barring the gray door shut. 2. Gerard's voice continued, crackling. You have a new patrol. Starting now, you will walk the interior perimeter of Thatcher Hall. You will start at the main foyer door and walk clockwise. You must complete a full circuit in exactly 12 minutes. No faster, no slower. Use your stopwatch. If you hear footsteps matching your pace on the other side of an exterior wall, ignore them. If they fall out of sync, note the location and report it on your next radio window. Radio window. You will have a 60-second window to transmit at the end of each circuit on the even hour, starting at midnight. Go. I looked at my watch. 11:52. I had 8 minutes to get to the foyer and start. I grabbed my flashlight, my radio, my stopwatch. I ran. The patrol was a nightmare of timing and dread. The school was a black maze. My flashlight beam cut through the dark, making familiar halls alien. I started my circuit at midnight exactly, walking at a brisk, measured pace. Down the East Hall, past the locked classrooms, their windows looking out into impenetrable black. At the southeast corner, I heard the footsteps. They were outside, on the gravel path, keeping perfect time with my own. Crunch, 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 crunch. I kept walking, my eyes forward. I turned north along the library's exterior wall. The footsteps stayed with me, just beyond the brick and glass. Then, as I passed the midpoint of the library, the outside footsteps stopped for a second, then resumed. But now they were ahead of me by half a step. My skin prickled. I noted it mentally. Library, east wall, midpoint. I completed the circuit in 11 minutes, 58 seconds. At 12:12, I keyed the radio. Thatcher 1, circuit 1 complete. Anomaly at library east wall, midpoint. Footsteps ahead. Gerard's voice. Acknowledged. Continue. Next window at 2:12. The night became a grinding loop. Walk, count steps. Listen for mismatched footsteps. Note anomalies. Report. The anomalies piled up. A face pressed against a classroom window, featureless in the dark, that turned to follow my progress. A door at the end of the history wing that was now open, revealing a staircase that shouldn't be there, descending into deeper black. The smell of ozone and wet earth in the math wing. I reported each one, my voice growing monotone with fatigue. Gerard's acknowledgments were terse. At 3:48. During my fourth circuit, the radio crackled during my silent period. It was Lynn. Thatcher 1, be advised. We have a containment breach in the West Wing basement. It is mobile. It may attempt to cross to your sector via the underground utility tunnels. If you see any interior door, closet, classroom, boiler access that is vibrating, do not approach. Mark it and reroute. A new kind of fear, cold and sharp, injected itself into my exhaustion. The threats were no longer just outside. They were in the walls. I finished my circuit, my ears straining for any hum or rattle. At 4:12, I reported my latest anomalies. I added, "No vibrating doors observed." "Good," Gerard said. "2 more circuits. Maintain discipline." The 5th circuit was the worst. The footsteps outside were no longer just mismatched. They were multiple. A crowd was walking with me, just out of sight. I heard whispers, not in my mother's voice, but in many voices, layered over each other, just below the threshold of understanding. And then, in the main foyer, I saw it. The front doors, massive oak and glass, were vibrating in their frames, not shaking violently, but humming with a low, resonant frequency. A fine dust sifted down from the transom above them. It was trying to come through. I rerouted, my breath short, taking the long way around through the administrative offices to avoid the foyer. I lost 20 seconds. I had to jog the final stretch to complete the circuit in 12 minutes flat. As I skidded to a stop at my starting point, the clock ticked to 5:12. My transmission window. Thatcher 1, Circuit 5, front doors vibrating, rerouted successfully, no other new contacts, static. Then a new voice, one I didn't recognize, young and terrified. "Please, is anyone there? This is West Campus 2. I'm locked in the music room. The thing, it's in the hall." It sounds like a guttural, choking sound, then a series of wet cracks. The transmission cut off. I stood in the dark, gripping the radio. Protocol was silence except during my window, but a man had just died. I waited. At 5:13, Gerard came on. His voice was grim. "Thatcher 1, ignore last transmission. Final circuit. Initiate at 5:15. After completion, return to your closet. Seal the door. Await dawn." The last circuit was a blur of terror and exhaustion. The whispers were louder. The vibrations seemed to travel through the floor. But I kept my pace. 12 minutes. I finished at 5:27. I ran for my closet, sealed the door with 3 fresh layers of tape, and sat in the dark, my back against the shelves, listening to my own ragged breath. At 6:05, the exterior lights came back on with a collective thump. The normal hum of the building systems returned. The radio emitted a steady tone, then Lynn's voice, drained but normal. "All stations, protocol midnight lifted. Stand down. Resume standard post-shift procedures." I peeled the tape away and opened the door. The school looked normal in the morning light, filtering through dusty windows. But as I did my final walkthrough, I saw the changes. A long hairline crack ran up the wall beside the front doors. The door to the history wing staircase was closed, but a fresh, damp streak of mud led from its threshold down the hall for about 10 feet before vanishing. In the math wing, all the ceiling tiles were slightly misaligned, as if someone had lifted and replaced each one. I clocked out at 6:15. Gerard was nowhere to be seen. The next night, he was back. He looked 10 years older. He handed me a single sheet of paper. It wasn't an amendment. It was a list of damages from the long night, with instructions for repair. The crack by the front door was to be filled with a specific epoxy from the storage room. The mud was to be cleaned and the area sprayed with a vinegar solution. The ceiling tiles were to be left alone. "What about the West Campus guy?" I asked quietly. Gerard shook his head. "Rule 1 of this job, you clean your own sector. His sector isn't our business, not anymore." He met my eyes. "You did good. You followed the rules. That's all there is." Weeks passed. The seasons turned. The intense cold of a New England winter settled over the campus. My debt was now a quarter of what it had been. I had saved enough for a security deposit on a better apartment. I no longer thought about the rules. I simply was them. The hourly glance at the basement corridor was as natural as breathing. The code words were my daily catechism. The basement check, now done alone again, after Gerard deemed me acclimated, was a 15-minute meditation in controlled indifference. The sounds from the north shadows were just data points: scraping, benign, whispering, elevated risk, maintain focus, crying, high risk, expedite departure. One night in late February, during my check, something different happened. I was logging the sump pump light when I heard my name, not called from the shadows, whispered directly into my ear from behind me. The voice was my own. "You could look," it said, my own breath, my own cadence. "Just a peek. Don't you want to know what you're paying off your debt with?" I didn't freeze. I didn't turn. I finished writing the number in the logbook. I closed the book. I hung the pen on its string. I walked to the stairs, counted each of the 14 steps, turned off the lights, locked the door, and pulled the handle 3 times. I was clear by 1:34. In the coda of my shift, in the quiet hour before dawn, I did more than the required inventory. I reorganized the supply closet. I made sure the sealant tape, the water, the batteries, the epoxy, the vinegar were all front-facing and clearly labeled. I updated the logbook with meticulous notes about a slowly dripping faucet in the second-floor boys' bathroom and a flickering emergency light in the east stairwell. I wrote a clean, concise summary of the shift. Then, on a fresh sheet of paper from the printer in the admin office, I began to write. I didn't title it. I just numbered it. 1. The basement door is gray. The crossbar is in the alcove to the left. It weighs 19 pounds. 2. There are 14 steps. Always count them. If there are 15, the bottom step is not a step. Do not touch it. 3. The pressure gauge should read between 40 and 60. If it reads exactly 0 or exactly 100, do not log it. Leave immediately. Report the reading as faulty. 4. The sump pump light is green. If it is any other color, do not report it until 2:15. Describe it as off. 5. You will hear things from the north end. You will hear things that sound like people you know. They are not. Your business is the gauge, the light, the lock. 6. The sealant tape roll has 40 yards. A 3-layer seal under a standard door uses approximately 2 yards. Plan accordingly. 7. The code words change. The envelope in the lockbox is truth. Everything else on the radio is a test. 8. If you see a colleague in a navy jacket, they're not your colleague. If they call your name, they are lying. 9. Dawn is at 6:05, not 6, not 6:10. 6:05. The lights will come on. If they do not, begin Protocol Sierra immediately and wait for the 3 calls. 10. Your reflection in the windows between 3 and 4 a.m. is your friend. If it disagrees with you, trust it less than you trust the silence. I read it over. It was not the full binder, not the amendments, not the emergency protocols. It was the core of it, the distilled essence of survival. I left it on the bench in the custodial closet next to the binder. I clocked out at 6:05. The morning was bitterly cold, the sky a pale, washed-out gray. As I walked across the salted path to my car, I saw a figure standing by the tree line near the sports field. It is too far to make out details, but it wore a brown jacket. It stood perfectly still, facing the school. It might have been Gerard, doing a perimeter check. It might have been something else, learning the shape of a new uniform. I unlocked my car. I didn't look back. I started the engine, let it idle for a full minute, a new habit, a rule of my own, and drove slowly down the winding hill away from Crane's Hollow. The heater whirred to life, pushing stale, warm air into the cold space. In my rearview mirror, the school receded, its windows dark, its secrets held fast by locks and light switches and counted steps. I had a check deposited in 2 days. I had an apartment viewing at noon. The world outside was waiting, mundane and vast. I kept my eyes on the road, my hands at 10 and 2, and I did not think about the north shadows, or the weight of a crossbar, or the sound of my own voice in the dark. Those were tomorrow's problems. For the next person,